You are now tuned in to the Project 365 experience.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Project 365 podcast. Joined again by Josué Sédrjo. And Josué, just, wow. At what point we're at in the Olympics, it's amazing to see. I don't know if you agree, but the level of competition that we've got the opportunity to just witness and just see the level of athletes as well. It's amazing to see, Josué.
I mean, it's a reminder that it's not just because you're an NBA player that it means that you're a good basketball player. Just like it means not because you're not in the NBA that you're not a good basketball player and a competent basketball player. In addition, that some of the FIBA rules help level the playing field, and it leads to very, very competitive, highly disputed games, let alone the fact that this is a national team competition, and let alone the fact that it's a win or go home scenario at all times.
If Josué Sédrjo was an Olympic athlete, which sport would he win a gold medal in?
Oh, 100 meters, easy. Yeah, well, I always wanted to be a sprinter. Donovan Bailey was my first athlete that inspired me growing up, 5 years old, 1996, 1984. I remember it. It's easy. It's the one Olympic event I make sure every year to, a month out before the competition, I'm looking at the date and the time to make sure I'm not missing it. Beyond basketball, it's not even close. So yeah, that would be the one.
Yeah, Jose, you're gonna get the people excited. They're gonna be looking forward to you in 2028 in LA.
I don't think so. Okay. I don't think so. I don't unless there's is there a men's league Olympics? I might compete in that.
We have a lot of basketball we're gonna dive into. We're going to start off with our quarters. So just to kind of give a brief overview of what we're going to look at for today, we had the quarterfinals at the recording of this podcast. The semis, the matchups, and the games have already been played. So we're going to preview the medal games afterwards. But let's start into the quarterfinals. The first one that we have to talk about, France versus Canada in the first game of our quarterfinals. France ended up winning 82-73. Jose, where do we start? Where do we start with this one?
Well, the listeners, those who are listening just audio, are not going to see this, but I'm currently showing a white flag on the camera because sometimes you're just beaten and you need to admit when it's time to surrender. And quite frankly, all my fears as a Team Canada supporters, all my fears were realized. Those fears going into the tournament period, if we were to meet Team France at any point, whether it was, they weren't in our group, so we knew that, but quarters, semis, finals, regardless, my fears were well established, and they were as follows. Number one, the home crowd. Home crowd has a way to inspire, let's call lesser important players to become more important, and the very important players to play well. We saw the case where role players played beyond anything they could have imagined. So that's number one. Number two, the potential, I'm not going to say the propensity, I will say the potential for refereeing to become a part of the story, because the pressure of having a home crowd on top of them, sometimes as a human you just respond in a way that's different than if you don't have 20,000 people on your butt. I don't believe this was a huge factor, but I do believe there were some instances where it played a role in the possession, it played a role in a segment of a quarter. But I do believe overall the result was going to be the same either way. And then the last part, my last fear was if Victor Wembanyama is the best player on the court, all the calculus can just go away just because this guy is different. That fear wasn't realized in the sense that he was the best player on the court. I don't believe he was. But his defensive presence certainly acted as if we almost had no chance to establish our base offense as Team Canada, because he took away paint attacks. Not paint scoring, but paint attacks. Like just simply creating multiple driving lanes. Not creating multiple driving lanes. The ability for a driving lane, once created, to be effective. Like sucking in the defense, creating kickouts. He took away the drives. When the kicks were going to be available, there was incredible rotations behind him. We're going to talk about that. And then on the swing, which is part of the main team had on offense in like classic terms, drive kick swing, especially with a heavy guard-based roster. On the swing, most of the time the swing wasn't available because once the kick was happening, the guy was trapped in the corner or in a bad situation, or it was a late shot clock. So, yeah, all my fears were realized, and it wasn't a pleasant experience, not one bit. Now, if you're a Team France person, you are ecstatic, especially that, as of this recording, they are in the final.
Yeah. No, you make a valid point, because I think I think that's the beauty of basketball. Not all drives are the same, right? So if you drive to the basket, there's different factors that could affect the drive, right? So what you're saying is that Victor's presence being there, instead of being able to drive maybe all the way to the paint to force the defense to have to take maybe an extra step towards you, Victor's so good at like having a presence there where it's like the defense, it kind of felt like defensively France was a bit more intact. It was harder for the Canadian guards to be able to drive and get to the paint and create those extra kickouts. And we saw it right off the bat. I think the one thing that stood out to me was France threw the first punch in just this chess match that we talked about.
It wasn't a punch. It was a bazooka and a tank, a T-30 tank, all at the same time on the court. Like, not in a war field. Like, actually, if you brought a tank to a basketball game, that's what that first punch was like.
Agreed. We're looking at just who they started. You had Frank Ntilikina, Nicolas Batum, Cordinier, Yabusele, and Victor Wembanyama. How much of an impact did that switch before the game even started? How much of an impact did it have at just neutralizing certain things that the Canadians wanted to get into?
It changed. It was a huge deal. Going into this game, when we did our SWOT analysis in our previous podcast, one of the things that we highlighted was, from a Team Canada standpoint, was one of the opportunities was to attack Team France's guards, because the guard play up to that point had been offensively, to put it nicely, spotty, and to be more mean, non-existent, and incredibly ineffective. If it was self-creation, it didn't lead to anything. If it was playmaking opportunities, it didn't create sufficient advantage for the offense to be efficient. So from a Team Canada standpoint, it was like, well, offensively, go at them. Defensively, there's nothing to worry about. Once the change in the starting lineup, where Evan Fournier goes to the bench, Isaiah Cordinier is in, Matthew Strazel goes to the bench, and Andrew Albisi goes in, there was no weak point for Team Canada to attack. There was no guy that you could identify and say, we're going to go at him. That is a pressure point where if we press it, we can create an advantage consistently and reliably. On top of the fact, because those IBC and Cordinier, both those guys are athletic and physically, let's say, at the very least, hold their own. IBC is strong. Cordinier holds his own. Offensively, like from a Team Canada standpoint, defensively from a Team Canada standpoint, offensively for Team France, defense for Canada, the idea of you don't have to worry about them. Isaiah Cordinier scored 20 points and was 4 for 4 from 3. And in the first quarter, the two bombs he threw up in transition, dribble pull-up threes, in full confidence, lifted not just him, but the spirit of his entire team. He had been much more, not timid, but passive, lot less assertive, up until the Germany game. And when Team France went down, he played a lot in the second half, and he was one of the very few players who competed his butt off throughout the entirety of the second half. And he took that performance and carried it in this game, and then put it on 1,000. And defensively, whoever he was at the point of attack, never got past him. And then offensively, he played so free and so loose and with so much energy and jolt that France got off to a huge lead early on. And yes, even though Team Canada mounted a comeback in the second half, the lead was so big, it was such a mountain to climb that they just never had enough juice to really push past the finish line. And paired with the change in starting lineup, the fact that France identified their opportunity in our SWOT analysis of attacking Team Canada's size and making a point and emphasis for Mathias Lessard and Gershon Yabusele in the starting lineup and Mathias Lessard in coming off the bench to not just catch the ball in the post, but aggressively attack whoever their matchup was, attempting to draw fouls and to score, both of those things. Yeah, it changed the entire dynamic of the game. Because now it took away Team Canada's transition offense. It took away a bunch of players who, whether it's Dylan Brooks or R.J. Barrett or maybe not Dwight Powell, but Ken Birch had a quick stint, but then picked up some fouls too. Like, rhythm in the rotation couldn't be a thing because there was always foul trouble happening. Like, France shot 42 free throws for the game and made 33 of them. Combine those two things. Those aren't things that in our SWOT analysis we could have seen coming at the time. Oh, by the way, Rudy Gobert only played 3 minutes. So a pressure point that Team Canada could have had offensively of like, hey, when he catches the ball, like, don't really worry about him. Like, he's not gonna punish us. Well, all of a sudden that's taken away, and Victor Wembanyama's at the 5, and when he's rolling, it's a lot different. Like, you have to account for it. And it allowed Gershon Yabusele to play as a 4. It allowed Nicolas Batum to play as a 3 instead of a 2. And it allowed the guard pressure that we talked about, the change in starting lineup, to be an incredibly, incredibly, incredibly disruptive two-way threats throughout the entirety of the game.
Yabusele, 30 minutes, 6 of 9 from the free throw line, 22 points. Mathias Lessard, 19 minutes. 9 of 14 from the free throw, and he was making them like in the clutch, like whenever he was going to the line. I was like hoping that, from my bias, I was hoping that he would like at least just miss one. He just seemed like he was making everything timely whenever Canada was trying to make a run. So then those two combined for 35 points.
Plus Isaiah Cordina off the bench with an extra 20. Like,
right.
Let's
right.
55 out of the 73 didn't come from the quote unquote main guys.
Right. It's interesting because what we talked about was Canada being able to have depth as one of their strengths. It just really seemed like we just really got outplayed. And I'm gonna say we because I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm gonna say that for now. But it just really seemed like they just got outplayed, Jose. I mean,
this is not one of the games where it's a simplistic explanation for why Team Canada performed. This is not one of those games where you have a simple explanation for a team regarding their performance, good or bad. So for Team France, they played incredibly well, but there's a whole list of factors and we didn't even get into the fact of they had a massive team meeting after the Germany game where the federation got involved. There was some harsh words said within the locker room between players and coaches, between players themselves, players and federation. Like, it was a significant ordeal. And then to respond to that, like, that is part of the explanation. That's part of the story of the game. So it's not just this thing happened, hence they won. Inversely, for Team Canada, it's not just like, guys weren't aggressive, guys didn't perform. You just touched on the bench. I don't think they ever quite figured out how to make sure that both Jamal Murray and Andrew Nembhard were going at the same time. What is the plan or the offensive progression throughout the play calls where both Jamal and Andrew are comfortable, and that is the base of the bench offense? Multiple reasons. They'd never played together. Murray was going through, whether it was injury or rust or finding his rhythm. I don't think it's any secret he struggled throughout the tournament. And even though we thought after the Spain game that he was like on his way back to a certain rhythm, unfortunately he didn't perform in this game. And then you add the roster construction. simply by sheer talent available from a Team Canada standpoint, that was one of the opportunities we highlighted for Team France, right? The lack of size for Team Canada was an opportunity for France to impose themselves, and they did that. So if you take advantage of your opportunities, how can you blame the other team for not being able to correct their weakness? Like, sometimes it's just that simple. Do you think that Team Canada didn't show up? Do you think there was a lack of effort, a lack of will, a lack of fight? Like, physically, like on every Mathias Lessard post-up, I saw hands barred up in the back. I saw clutching. I saw grabbing. I saw multiple, efforts. So it's not like, they just sat there and didn't compete or attempt to respond to the French physicality. Like, sometimes you just get beat, honestly. And I think with now a couple of days, like, going through the analysis, rewatching the game, like, at the end of the day, play that game 10 times. I think France wins that game, man.
Again, going back to what you said, Canada struggled to guard the interior. France had 22 points in the bait. It'll be very interesting to see where the Canadian side goes to it. Let's move on to our next quarterfinal game. Germany-Greece. Germany ended up winning and moving on to the semi, 76-63. Real quick, what are some answers if we're looking at the Greek Federation? What are some things that they have to start looking at just moving forward?
Yeah, they're in an interesting crossroads in their journey and their growth. I mean, it goes without saying, Giannis Antetokounmpo is an incredible talent. I don't think that he underperformed, even though you really could point to like one game, let's say, where he was like amazing or like beyond great. I think all throughout the tournament he was at the very least solid, if not good. But where he struggled is simply that he needed help, and the second creator on paper was supposed to be Nick Kalathis, and unfortunately Nick Kalathis is much more closer to the end of his career than the beginning. And finding his replacement at the youth level, or if it's the need to naturalize somebody and being given a Greek passport to compete for Team Greece, that has to be the priority of the program. And it's going to be very hard for them to compete at the highest level until they fix that. And Nick Kalathis, for those who aren't familiar with this game, this is a guy we're talking about, let's say 10 years ago, dribble, pass, shoot with incredible flair. Like the passing, the field, the floor general. This is not just like a traditional point guard. This was like a point guard that had it all, a complete point guard. Like, score when you need to score, pass when you need to pass, make everybody better, have the leadership and the two-way play defensively. Even though in the NBA he wasn't a defensive ace, but in European competition, he was good enough to compete. And finding his replacement, his successor amongst the younger folks has to be the priority for this federation.
It's funny you're saying that. Like, I think, like, you touched on a good point. Like, I think as much as we, Giannis is as good as, you're talking about a, former MVP. You're talking about someone who won an NBA championship, right? When you go into the FIBA game, it's a completely different game, right? For this game, I put this in parentheses. Giannis had an off game, as I'm doing my air quotes. 22 points, not a 14 from the field. I thought he did a good job of just attacking a bit quicker, right? Not really letting the German defense really load up on him. But again, there's only so much you can do where you're looking at a team like Germany. Germany is really like one of those deep teams and organizations. So it'll be interesting to see. Okay, so moving on to our other matchup, we have Serbia and Australia. Serbia ended up winning 95-90 in overtime. Josué, we were texting back and forth where to start with this game.
I mean, up until today, and we'll get to that semifinal between Team USA and Team Serbia. That was the game of the tournament. Incredible game, back and forth towards the end. But Australia goes up 24 points in the first half. Serbia cuts it to to one possession like 2 minutes into the third quarter, ties it super early in the third quarter, and then it's back and forth hand combat for the rest of the game. I mean, and this is something that was very. This was something that I was conscious of, but after like the first couple of games, I looked around and was like very convinced of it. You know, you look at we're going through the quarterfinals, right? Like we just went through Canada, France. We went through Germany, Greece. We're going through Serbia, Australia now, and we'll touch on Team USA, Brazil. I am absolutely convinced that there are 7 out of those 8 teams would going into the quarterfinals. We're telling themselves we either have a chance to win gold or to win a medal, and if we don't, it's a disappointment. It's a numbers game. There's only 3 of you guys that can win a medal. But if all 7 have a legitimate chance, and not just one of those like delusional athlete like telling themselves like, oh, we have a chance to compete, like no, like legitimately having a chance. Like there is a world where all 7 of those teams would win a medal. Like it will lead to incredible games and incredible competition that will rise and fall on a coin. Like it's a flip a coin. And you know, Nikola Jokic, 21 points, 14 rebounds. 9 assists. I mean, you know, being as amazing as excels, Bogdan Bogdanovic, sorry, even though he didn't shoot the ball well, provided just enough offensive punch, especially in the comeback, in the second half to push Serbia over the edge. But one player that he was good against Australia. He was even better against the Team USA. Vasilij Micic, who is now with the Charlotte Hornets. For those who are familiar with Team Spain, like for me, he's like a mini Sergio Llull. Like those two guys are very, very similar in the game, right? Where it's passing flair, but just enough scoring with 3-point shooting to kind of give you a blend of the complete FIBA guard. I'm not gonna say European because it's truly like a FIBA thing, and it's just a matter of figuring out like, okay, if it once he gets to the NBA, find the right situation for your game to translate because you are good enough to perform at that level. Add those 3 things, those 3 players together, and unfortunately they took away an amazing first half from Patty Mills. Like scored 20 at half at will, just absolutely on fire, and it's most likely was his last game for Team Australia at the international level. And we had mentioned in our preview, like, there was a sense of urgency for a lot of those guys in that group. Him, Matthew Dellavedova, even Jock Landale starting to get up there in age. So, they laid it out on the line. And, we said it was going to be about, who's the tougher team and who's the bully on the block. And part of the story was that Serbia got some offensive rebound late, and they pulled through in the end.
It was very interesting to see, especially with, we've been giving a lot of credit to just how Australia really focuses on bringing in the right people, having the right mentality, and having like the right system just around certain players, right? When you're looking at a team that is potentially going to be led in the next Olympics by Josh Giddey, moving forward, what do you think is a couple of things that Australia has to look forward to moving?
Has to look forward to, or needs to adjust or do better? What are you thinking here?
I would start with looking to adjust, and then like what do they have forward to? We know that they have like a couple of players that have a bright future.
So their roster, their player pool, their talent pool looks a lot like Team Canada's, and that's heavy on guards, a couple wings, light on bigs. So figuring out how to bridge that gap, but at the wing spot and especially at the big spot, that has to be the point of emphasis in the next 4 years. Whether that's through domestic development or it's through naturalization of non-Australian players, if they are to truly and legitimately compete for a gold medal, that area of weakness has to get corrected. In fact, part of the reason why Serbia was able to get back in the game is going to a 2 big lineup and not just it's not so much about the impact on the offensive rebounding, it's the impact on the defensive rebounding. Like, it's making sure that, okay, we have enough speed, we have enough physicality to the point of attack. If a shot goes up, let's just make sure they have absolutely no chance to grab an offensive rebound. And that is just as valuable. Your screening is more effective, right? Like, when you have legitimate size on your front line, guys are just more open, right? And making sure that is corrected. Other than that, it's all about keep doing, quote unquote, keep doing what you're doing. Like, Josh Giddey, you're a young guy, keep getting better. Dyson Daniels, you're a young guy, keep getting better. Drew Brief didn't have much of an opportunity. He played 21 minutes in this game, but overall this tournament didn't have that much of an opportunity. But he's a young player who has a chance to get better. Continue working on your game. Jack McVeigh was a guy not everybody was not a lot of people were familiar with. He's a 3-point shooter, two-way guy, just signed with Houston this year. I think this guy's an NBA player. I think he can be potentially a replacement for Patty Mills in the role on that team, in the very similar role on that team. So that's what they need to emphasize. So continue to develop the domestic talent and find a solution in the front court.
It'll be very interesting to see. Our final quarterfinal matchups was USA versus Brazil. USA was the heavy favorite. They ended up winning that game 122-87. We know all about USA, so I kind of want to take a different angle with this one. If we're looking at Bruno Caboclo in this game, had 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 assist, shooting 13 from 20 from the field. Josué, let's take a different angle with this. Like, when you see players like that do really good, right? Even though they lost, is there a chance that certain NBA teams potentially may look at those guys, or it may lead to different opportunities?
There's no question about that. I mean, NBA teams send scouts to the Olympics, to the World Cup, to Eurobasket. Like, there are plenty of NBA teams being represented at these Olympics. I know that for a fact. It's not just about draft eligible players, because there are a few of those, but also veterans, like guys who were either had a chance. You just mentioned Bruno Caboclo. He's one who had a chance to earn an NBA role, and it didn't work out for whatever reason, and now he's playing pro in a different situation, starting to excel, has a good game at the Olympics. Hey, let's examine his case. Like, that's one option. Or it's the guys who don't necessarily have an opportunity in an NBA game and now come into an international stage and have an opportunity to have more playing time, and it gives a good test case to see how they perform. It's really broken down 3 reasons or 3 factors that you would, as an NBA organization, decide whether you want to commit or an opportunity or give an opportunity to said player. Here we're talking about Bruno Caboclo, but it could be anybody. And there was an example of Keisa Tomonga, the Japanese guard, who performed incredibly well against Team France and had immediately an Exhibit 10 the next day with the Memphis Grizzlies. He had been on the radar, but that game cemented a place for him on the team. So there are 3 factors, I believe. If you want to summarize it, there's 3 factors. First of all, who's the player as a person? First and foremost, who is he as a person? Tell me about his character, what makes him tick, who's the people around him, what's his story. Like, that is going to be the first factor an NBA team is going to take a look at. The second factor is going to be the team cycle, and by cycle, I'm talking about the cycle of contention. Are we going for a championship right now, and we're looking for a veteran that's going to come in and play a role? Are we a rebuilding team, and we're just looking for talent and looking for any way, shape, or form to add talent, maybe in a way that is non-traditional, maybe, or is out of the box, because we just need talent. And we're at the beginning of our construction cycle. We need talent. And then the third factor is the financial commitment, and that's from the team and the player standpoint. So from the team standpoint, a lot of times, you're looking to offer a veteran minimum, you're looking to offer an Exhibit 10, a 2-way contract, or sometimes even with cap space, like a mid-level exception, whether it's taxpayer mid-level or non-taxpayer mid-level. So do we have the ability as a team to give that financial commitment that the player is looking for? Does it make sense from a roster construction to give that financial commitment to the player? Now, inversely, from the player standpoint, those guys that are being looked at all have professional deals somewhere in the world. And very often, they are comfortable. Like, they have a situation where either they are the man on their team, they're the most highly paid. It's a multi-year deal. Maybe there's a relationship with either ownership, or there's a if I'm a French guy and I'm playing in France, a Belgian somebody from Belgium playing in Belgium. Like, I'm playing at home. My family is near me. There's a certain level of comfort. And then financially, maybe I'm not making $1 million US, but I might be making 500,000 euros on top of my house paid for, my car paid for, and my family is nearby. So am I really willing to sacrifice all that for the potential to have like the third center spot, maybe the fifth wing, the fifth guard? Is it worth it for me? Was my life goal to reach the NBA no matter what? Is it to explore because I'm not happy where I'm at home? Like, that commitment, that sacrifice has to be examined from the player's standpoint just as much. So those are the three factors that needs to be considered when you look at if an NBA a player performing at the Olympics is deserving of an opportunity, or if the opportunity makes sense from his standpoint.
It was an amazing quarterfinals. Just seeing many players step up and whatnot, and even you're looking at the Brazil side. Like, obviously, you get the chance to play against the U.S. You don't get the result that you want. But, yeah, a lot of answers that have to be you got to get a lot of answers because, Marcelo Huertas is 41 years old, right? So you got to take
still playing, still kicking, kicking. Couldn't believe it, man. Still kicking.
Yeah, it was amazing to see. Let's move on to our semifinals. So we are going to quickly recap our semifinals. High level of basketball that was played. Our first game, France ended up winning that game 73-69 versus Germany. And again, in this, when we look at the beginning of the game, the story of this game was just the starting lineup and Rudy Gobert minutes. So for me, like, this was something that I was interested in just keeping an eye out for because I was always wondering what if we were talking about it. It was like at some point we were wondering, was there going to be a point where whether egos were going to go or like the something was going to happen to the rotation. So going into this game, definitely Rudy Gobert not getting as many minutes was definitely the story of the beginning of the game for sure.
So the Team Canada game was already a massive change of reversal of fortune. One, it sounds like he was going through, and I'll credit the podcast and show notes. This is Team France. National podcast, podcast that covers team. They do actually a great job. So for French listeners, I actually highly would recommend this because it was there. It was, for me as a Canadian, it was like perspective from the enemy camp. One and two, the basketball analysis was actually pretty good. And he mentioned that even before the game, and I alluded this to before, Vincent Collet said, "I'm going to make a change in rotation." So he was already not going to play. And then secondly, he has apparently an injury to his hand where that made it very difficult for him to perform at a very high level. So played only 3 minutes against Team Canada. Played, I believe, 7 minutes in the game today. Or 6 minutes, not more than that. Right away, right there, Team France offense significantly improved. Not because he's not on, because him and Victor together is not optimal for their offense. Victor cannot shoot three-pointers to a level that creates additional spacing for the Team France offense. It's not that he can't shoot threes. It's that the level that he's at, the defense doesn't feel like he is deserving to not clog up spacing. Like, I would rather start in as his defender. I would rather start in the paint and close out to him rather than start out and then have to either stunt or jab or help or whoever I need to help out or help off of him. In if there's anything going on the weak side, like I don't need to do that. Let me just start in the paint. So because of that, Victor Wembanyama is way more effective as a 5 than as a 4 currently. He did shoot 4-17 in this game, but Isaiah Cordinier was great again. Did the same thing the Team Germany did to same Canada. Passed at the point of attack, made his threes, played with energy, played with force, played with fearlessness. Gershon Yabusele basically played the exact same game, except he scored 16 points in this game instead of 22 against Team Canada. And then, quite frankly, there was just a refusal to lose that Team France didn't show through the round robin. Quite frankly, hadn't shown in 3 years. Like, if you go through the World Cup last year, Eurobasket the year before, Tokyo Olympics, yes, but since then, hadn't seen it from this group. And a lot of the guys are the same. It's the same core group of guys. Going back even further than that, but these last 3 years, the Evan Fourniers, the Nicolas Batum, Rudy Gobert, like I mentioned, Gershon Yabusele has been around that group for a while. Mathias Lassalle around for that group for a time. So it's not, there are some young guys who came in, whether it's Mathieu Strazel, Victor Wembanyama, obviously, but it's been the same core group, and it felt like between the Germany game and the Canada game, there was a rallying point of like, okay, well, this might not be the last competition for all of us, but it's one of our last ones, and it certainly is the only time we're ever going to play the Olympics at home. So what are we really about? And this Germany game, beyond the X and O's, this Germany game was another example of we are going to go on this floor and play every single possession like it's our last, and the home crowd will carry us home. That is just as much of a big of a story as the X and O's of how they stopped Franz Wagner, how Dennis Schroeder didn't get as deep in the paint, it wasn't as effective, how like I mentioned, Isaiah Cordinier finished over Daniel Tice a few times. Like, yes, all that mattered, but there was something bigger at play, and that in a 4-point game, sometimes that's all it takes to be the difference.
Yeah. It's we'll get to a bit more of Germany as we talk, because now with losing this game, they're going to be in the bronze medal game. But let's give France a bit of credit, because just the switch in the starting lineup, as you said, like, it covered up a lot of their potential weaknesses, eh?
No, it did. I mean, I like I said, the fact that you didn't have to, as a Team France offensive coordinator, you didn't have to worry about, okay, how do we solve Rudy Gobert catching the ball in the short roll? How do we solve Victor Wembanyama not necessarily providing as much spacing as we wish he did? And if he is going to catch the ball in pick and pop situation, like, is he going to make 4 out of 6 threes? Right now, no. He's actually making 3 of 9, which is what he shot today, because he's worth 1 point per possession, which is like, it just makes your offense okay. It doesn't make it great. So that the fact that Rudy was only coming in as a backup center, and most of the time beside Gershon Yabusele or Nicolas Batum at the 4 spot. It just gave them just enough room to breathe from a dribble drive standpoint, and from a screen and roll standpoint, or screen and sometimes not sometimes, actually most of the time it wasn't even screen and roll, it was screen and like post, right? It was like screen and then go post on the other block, catch the ball and then play out of that. Whether it's catching to pass, whether France got, I'm not going to get too technical here, but France got into their split cut game, or post to try to draw fouls. Not that Germany had the same size disadvantage, but the French offense is based around the bigs having a fairly significant role. That change in the starting lineup. It was like you had the round robin Team France game, and now you've had this elimination round France game, and those teams have been like completely different.
Yeah, new France wave. I don't think a lot of people in France are complaining about that right now. So,
Oh no, I mean they're and the ability to listen to French content gives you like really a sense of what people on the ground or people who cover the national team on a regular basis how they feel, and like I really can't emphasize enough how it was a very dire situation after the round robin game. Like for our listeners who are more familiar with hockey, it was as if like Team Canada had gone through the round robin like 1 win and 2 losses, and like had lost to I don't know like Team Sweden like 6-1, right? Like what do we do now? Like we're supposed to win the gold medal and we can't. Like not only can't beat Sweden, we're getting embarrassed. Like I don't. And by the way, this would be if the Olympics were in Vancouver like a few years back and we had lost like 6-1 to Sweden. Like it was that level of crisis. So for them to bounce back in the manner that they did, yeah, it's very impressive. And so if there are some Team USA fans that feel incredibly confident, like yeah, we got this, it's gonna be fine. I understand where the confidence comes from. I would be wary to blindly ignore let's say, it's not the magic, but the ethos of this group, of this Team France group currently. They've currently found something. Let's see how that translates moving forward.
Speaking of Team USA, in our second semifinal game, USA won 95-91 versus Serbia. Josué, Serbia led for a lot of the game.
They
right?
did.
Give them a scare. You needed all of Kevin Durant and LeBron James and Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry had an outstanding, efficient game. 12 out of 19 from field goal, 9 for 14 from 3. Josué, talk to us a little bit about Serbia. What did we see in the first, I'm going to say 30 minutes of this game?
Oh, I'll go further. I think it was the first like 33 minutes, and it was more. I'll disagree slightly with your words. You said they gave him a scare. This wasn't a scare. This was they had a legitimate chance to win the game, and this was always the opponent for me that I had highlighted going into the tournament for Team USA specifically as the one that would give them not just the most trouble, but have an actual outside chance at winning. Like if everything lined up right, could they win the game? And the answer was yes. And everything almost lined up just right for them to win the game. So in the first half, they shot 9-16 from 3. And a lot of the threes were wide open. Nikola Jokic basically didn't sit down for the entire first half. And the fact that obviously we know what he does from a playmaking standpoint. He makes the game easy for everybody. But Bogdanovic, Vasilij Micic, and Filip Petrusev were able to generate threes sometimes even without him getting a touch or without him having to do most of the heavy lifting play to play. And so that's what helped them build a massive lead, at the beginning of the game. I don't think like it's not like Team USA didn't show up or wasn't, let's say, focused. Like I don't believe that's what happened. I just believe Serbia was what they were aware that they had a legitimate chance to win if they played well, and then they went out and they played well and then some, just a little bit more. Not like incredibly way out of the norm, but like they were just playing well, right? Like I don't think they were going to shoot 50% from 3 for the whole game, but there was a world where they shot 40% and it was like absolutely legitimate. And that's why they were able to build the lead, stretching out as much as 15. And, I thought at the end of the third quarter when they had the stretch where it was N1, 3 N1, basket N1 and no basket for Team USA within like the 1 minute that Jokic had sat down and they went like +7. I kind of thought to myself, like, they might win by 1 point just because of that stretch. And even though they didn't, they had an absolute legitimate chance to win this game. It wasn't just like Team USA, like, fooling around or not taking him seriously. Like, no, they went out. Team Serbia went out and gave themselves a chance to win. They simply couldn't get the job done.
It definitely is a testimony to just the growth. Again, we mentioned this a lot on every episode. Just the growth of basketball, because like, I mean, it has to be a luxury for players who potentially don't get that kind of exposure in the NBA and whatnot, for them to have a 3-time MVP on their team that's like breathing kind of confidence into them. That's a theme that I've noticed throughout these Olympics, where you're seeing all these NBA players, these high-impact NBA players that choose to go play for their respective teams. And it's almost like everybody else just like looks to their right. They understand the value of this NBA player that is in their locker room. And then everybody just seems like they're stepping up. And I don't know if it's going to get any easier for anybody, Jose.
I mean, why would it, right? Like, this currently in the NBA, there's the most international players there's ever been. Worldwide, there are more professional leagues operating at a higher level than ever before. Sure, there are down years in certain leagues, but just like overall, the overall pool of talent in non-NBA basketball leagues is as high as you can ever remember. There are more resources being poured in at the youth level in more places in the world than ever before. So, yeah, the trend is not going to change or go away. The question is, at the end of the day, how many more elite, and I'm highlighting, underlying elite players that are non-Americans that can be developed in nations who have a chance to win at the Olympics. At the end of the day, that's what's going to be the difference between winning and losing. Because, if we're turning to Team USA side, like what we saw was really good players going out and taking the game away from their opponent. Like it's nothing more complicated than that, truly. And they each did it in the way that makes them great. And I'll explain. LeBron James passed, drove, shot just a little bit, not a ton, shot just a little bit, and defended everybody his butt off. What's the name of his game? What's made him the best or the second best, the third best, whatever, any way you slice it, one of the greatest players of all time? It's his versatility. It's the fact that he can do everything, run your offense on and off the ball at 6'9", and defensively be incredibly versatile. He did that. Kevin Durant is one of the coldest, most incredible scorers the NBA has ever seen. He was scoreless in the first half. He had 2 points going by the end of the third quarter. He finished with 14 and had a stretch where he scored like 8 out of 10 or 6 out of 9 for Team USA, and all shots in rhythm, self-created, or maybe he attacks off a closeout, but he had taken time to stop and then attack in a way that's unstoppable because he's 6'10", and he's been doing this all his entire life. By the way, the best scorer, the highest scorer in this game you mentioned was Steph Curry. He scored 38. He had 27 at half. He had 20 at half. He had 27 through 2.5 quarters. He's the only reason Team USA wasn't down 20, but down like 12, 13, 14. It was like able to hang around just enough to give themselves a chance to win. He was doing what he does best: shoot threes on anybody, any way possible, off the dribble and off the dribble and off the catch. He was 9 of 14 from three. And then the last part is Joel Embiid had his best game of the tournament. He scored 16. Yep. He gave Jokic something to think about. In the post, he was effective. On fadeaways, he was effective. Defensively, he was as engaged as his best self is. In the second half specifically, he got away from all the shenanigans that some people dislike about him and was strictly focused about two-way play and how do I make sure I maximize every play. If all four of those guys are going to do that, I mean, you're going to need a supernatural effort to beat them. And Serbia had an incredible effort, but it wasn't supernatural. And that was the difference in the game.
Absolutely. Moving over to our medal games. We're going to start with Germany versus Serbia. That's going to be our bronze medal game. What are some swing factors, keys that our listeners should be looking forward to in this matchup? Which, by the way, this is a so good enough matchup that it could have been the finals, if you really think about it.
I mean, it could have. This, again, I just said this, like 7 out of 8 teams had a chance to win. The idea, like, we're going to win a medal. This game could have been just as much a quarterfinal as it could have been the Olympic final. Like, to illustrate the level of competitiveness in this field, that's a prime example. But specific to the matchup, let's start with like just basic analysis. Non-Jokic minutes. He goes to the bench. What happens? Like, is Germany gonna run a million Dennis Schroeder, Daniel Theis pick and rolls? Is that when Franz Wagner has the ability to create and is he more effective? He had a bit of a rough game in this one. That's part of the reason why, unfortunately, Germany for Team Germany fans, they're not advancing to the final. What are they going to do in those minutes? And then inversely, from a Team Serbia standpoint, they shot the ball incredibly well. Like, I mean, they were. It was not just self-created threes; it was open threes were absolutely going in. Ball movement was effective. It was efficient. They were able to draw two on the ball consistently. If they can't do that in this matchup, because I think Team Germany might matched up on the perimeter just a tad better, not from an athletic standpoint, but just from a mind, familiarity of against the opponent standpoint. Then what? The 3-point shot is a big part of Team Serbia offense. Outside, inside, obviously with Jokic being such a focal point of their offense. If they can't generate as many quality threes, quality looks from three, then what? How do they generate quality offense? That's going to be for me the two swing factors in this game. I don't know what you think.
No, absolutely. I think even me looking at it, I think obviously Germany playing against France is a different kind of rim protection as if you're playing against Serbia. So there's that too. So France, if we're thinking about his impact throughout the first few games of this tournament, whenever he was getting to the lane, he had the size to kind of like see over the defense to get stuff, right? I kind of felt like in this matchup versus France, there's a certain level of it got neutralized, right? So that'll be interesting for us to see. And it's like, again, I'm tying everything that you said back in the bowl. The versatility of certain teams being able to switch and have different matchups, it provides us such a show basketball-wise, because now you're looking at almost like a game where certain matchups, it doesn't necessarily mean because this team beat this team that they're going to beat the next team. It doesn't mean like that. Like, it's all able to switch up and be different. I find that's for me, that's the most fun about this whole Olympic tournament.
I mean, no, sorry. I was just going to add on.
Yep.
This is a scenario where it's one and done, right? From the elimination round onwards, you lose a game, it's over, right? Very different than 7-game series where you have a ton of time. Additionally, you have 8 minutes less every game to have an impact. So that means, like, let's say sum of talent of Team 1 is way bigger than Team 2. That matters way less because you don't have as many minutes to use that quote-unquote difference in talent. And then finally, the fact that the court is smaller means athletic teams are at a lesser advantage than on an NBA court. They're not at a disadvantage. It still matters. I mean, we saw it in the Team USA game where, quite frankly, their defense is what really brought them back in the game, even more than their offense. Part of it is when you have athletic freaks, you have less ground to cover, so it really helps you from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah.
But then offensively, I can't just blow by everybody every time because I have less space to operate. So I have to, my mind and our offense, our offensive habits, and our chemistry, and our determination, and our will to win, like all of those are even more heightened in this situation versus the 7-game series. And that's why you have so many close matchups and so many teams that can beat one but can't beat somebody else, and vice versa.
Our gold medal game, USA versus France. France being at home, getting the opportunity to potentially go for a gold medal in front of their home fans. In this matchup, Josué, you're kind of hoping that France tries to turn this a bit more into a half-court game and try to neutralize USA's athleticism.
I think so. I'm still digesting this matchup. I'm actually going to use this with our listeners right now to to help wrap my mind around it. I will correct myself. I said Steph Curry had 38 points earlier. He had 36, and Joel Embiid had 19, not 16. I did want to make that correction. Okay, so let's start from Team France standpoint, because I think Team USA is a bit more not straightforward, but we have less new information, because this group and the way they've been using their lineups, they kind of been consistent throughout the exhibition period and now the elimination round. So it's less of a mental exercise, I think.
And for the most part, every team has had to adjust to try to them. It's been how to beat the USA.
That's right.
So there's that part of it. I think the only thing potentially that could change is maybe the bench shortens even more. Maybe one more player doesn't play.
That's right, because they went down to 10 today. Do they go down to 9? I don't think 8, but 9 is certainly a possibility. Somebody like Derek White, does he still have his role in the rotation? We shall see how Coach Kerr decide to go about it. But from a Team France standpoint, it's a very, very much more enticing mental exercise of how do they beat this team. Like, if you're going to beat this team, what are the things that need to happen? Okay, so my mind immediately goes to this new starting lineup, like we've talked about ad nauseum, where I'm pretty confident at this point. I'm pretty confident they can match up with Team USA athletically. Between the Isaiah Cordinier and either Indra BC or even bringing Frank Ntilikina in, who also had a role to play in the last 2 games. I think they can hold their own on either on the perimeter, one-on-one situation, even the post-ups situation from like their direct matchups, and the speed to chase guys around the screens, and if you're defending a pick and roll situation, the speed to on the over and drop, like the speed to put pressure on the over part. I'm pretty confident in that. I know their interior defense is going to be good between Victor Wembanyama. Even if Rudy Gobert plays 3 minutes, he's still massive. Mathias Lassalle clearly has elevated his game to a very, very, very high level. And then Gershon Yabusele is like the perfect connector between front court and back court. So I know defensively they're going to show up. They're going to cause them problems. They're going to cause Team USA to have to go to the third and fourth progression within a play call. Where I don't quite know the answer is how do they score against Team USA? Because we saw in the fourth quarter, closing time, balls on the line, like gold medal on the line. Like, quite frankly, that was a gold medal game. Both games were gold medal games in the semifinals. Team USA went to, for the most part, a lineup of Steph Curry, Devin Booker or Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Joel Embiid. I think Curry, Durant, LeBron are going to play no matter what. They're certainly going to play in the closing lineup. I know that I think one of Joel Embiid or Anthony Davis is going to play, depending on who's playing best during the game. If Embiid is able to score consistently, either against Victor, Rudy, or Matias, he's going to stay in. If Anthony Davis is catching a million bunch of lobs, he's going to stay in the closing lineup. And then finally, at the 2, it's just going to be a matter of, do we need speed or do we need shooting? Do we need speed in dribble drive attacks and on defense, or do we need simple, just quality spacing? Like, you can't leave Devin Booker open. If that's the closing lineup, defensively for Team France, what's the point of attack? What's their pressure point? What is the part of this lineup where they think to themselves, let's go at him or let's involve him in the action because we think we have an advantage? I'm tempted to say Steph Curry, but I also saw somebody who competed extremely hard, and there was a ton of awareness behind him to provide either zoning up behind him or active switching whenever he was involved in a ball screen. I'm looking at, do we want to involve Joel Embiid in a high pick and roll situation on the side or in the middle? Okay, but he is still massive. He is still large. And let's say it is a side pick and roll, and you throw it to Rudy, you throw it to Victor, you throw it to Mathias Lassalle, you throw it even to Gershon Yabusele, let's say, on the short roll. okay, so now we're looking at a back line of either LeBron or Kevin Durant, like in weak side rim protection. And now it's a situation where Gershon Yabusele or Victor Wembanyama has to score from right above the charge circle. He has to get from there to the rim and score. They have to do that. They're going to have to do that consistently going down the stretch. Let's say it's like a tie game, for example. I'm not sure how Team France does in that situation. Playing Evan Fournier more, okay, yes, it juices up your offense, but then defensively, that's an obvious point of attack for Team USA. So do you come out net positive as Team France? I'm not sure. Playing more of a Mathieu Strazel or an Adriel Ibisi or Frank Ntilikina, like they're not going to give you a ton of juice on offense, so then they might not help you that way. Victor Wembanyama was 4-17 today from the field. A lot of it self-created. He's going to go against a better defense, so I don't think those percentages are going to go up drastically more. I don't think he's going to be way more efficient. So I end up again in this place where I'm not sure how Team France is going to score. I don't know what you think about that.
No, you're right. And it's like, I think that's the scary part, is that USA could throw out so many different lineups. Like, you never know what they could do, right? So as you're talking through this, my gut and just watching the game, I think what I'm tempted to think is that if France starts the same lineup of Wemby, Batum, Yabusele, Cordigne, and Ntilikina, I think that they probably just go LeBron on Yabusele. I think that's probably like one of the first things that I'm kind of thinking. Okay, LeBron and Yabusele. And then they're going to try to go Embiid on Wemby. And then, you have the other matchups where like Cordigne Booker. It's not a bad matchup, eh? It's really not a bad matchup. But also Ntilikina, because he's not that much of an offensive threat, if you're the USA coaching staff, you're not afraid of putting Stephen Curry on him, right? But then after the fear of this, that you come off the bench now. One player that we didn't mention was Bam. Bam is another one of those players that, hey, potentially, if you have Bam on either one, because when France was at their best, France was playing those two bigs. That's when they were at their best. When they have Wemby, who's able to kind of like give the big forward kind of like playmaking, kick out, hit the cutters, and he could make the occasional catch and shoot threes, right? And then there's also like Yabusele that's putting constant pressure on the rim. I think that's where USA is able to neutralize, and they're going to really choose carefully who are those 9 players that they're going to put. Because I'm looking at their best lineup when they're able to go off the bench, and we didn't even talk about Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards comes off the bench. This may be something else, because now you're looking at someone who has the size of the guard position, right? And if he's just able to be able to beat the first line and put a bit of pressure on the defense, it's a whole different story. Like, this is an animal that we're talking about, like the USA, right? But again, France found something that for them it worked in those last 2 matchups. Right now, the fear has to be that USA is going to take them out of what got them to that situation.
I don't think that's. I'm actually not concerned about that at all. I think this group has found their strides. Like, after the round robin game, Evan Fournier came out in press conference and was openly questioning his role and openly questioning the offensive hierarchy and the strategies by the coaching staff. That was ironed out behind closed doors, and you saw in the last 2 games that there's a very much clearer offensive game plan. Like, I think instead of trying to teeter 2 worlds, they decided we're going to be a defensive team first, and then find an offensive rhythm out of that. Hence some of the changes in the starting lineup. But I'm not sure that is. I'm not sure a half-court game gives Team France an advantage. Like, I'm not sure they're better than. I'm not sure if the game is played in the half court. Does Team France come out ahead of that? Or do they operate better when they are slow, methodical, going through reads and progression? Like, I'm not sure that's the case. But then I know in transition they might match up with Team USA size, but I don't know if they can match up with the speed. Consistently. I know they can match up with the athleticism with the starting lineup. Like, I'm very confident of that. Like, that actually won't be a problem. But I'm thinking more of it in the half court rather than in transition. And then, oppositely, if the game is played in transition with that starting lineup, a lot of those guys, I don't know they can score in transition. So that might, I don't think that gives them advantage there. The one part where I'm thinking to myself, like, this can make up for a lot of weaknesses and a lot of team areas of improvement from a Team France standpoint, and I've talked about them before, it's the crowd, man. It's the fact that they're playing a gold medal Olympic final on home soil at the Olympics in Paris. I mean, this is literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So there's going to be an extra surge of adrenaline, an extra surge of quote-unquote hustle, playing hard, 50-50 balls from a Team France standpoint that even if Team USA is up to the challenge, it's just going to be an additional 5% that they're going up against. And that additional 5%, what is that worth? That's the question where ultimately I end. Is that worth 5 points? Is that worth 10 points? Is that worth 15 points? Is that worth 10 more free throws? Is that worth 3 offensive rebounds? Like, what is the worth of that? Because ultimately, they're going to need to scrap and claw for every single point because of all the areas of question that we have for them offensively. It's going to be complicated. I'm not going to say impossible, but complicated for them to score efficiently. So if it becomes a street fight with the fact that they are at home and they're hosting this Olympic final, and I promise you the Federation will put together all the bells and whistles to make sure that front row is all the, French basketball and French athletic royalty. What is that worth to them? What is that worth to that team in that game? That's, to me, that's the swing factor in this game.
It will be interesting to see. Josué, any final thoughts, man? This has been an amazing tournament so far. We got 2 more games left. I almost don't want this to end, man. I feel like we've been treated to some really good basketball.
Yeah, it's a reminder that if the Olympics were 7-game series, our brains would melt and explode because I don't think we would be able to compute how good the quality of this basketball would be. Although probably guys wouldn't be playing as hard as their lives are on the line because you'd have more time, obviously. I also do want to correct myself. I said that Keisi Tominanga was the one that the Japanese player who obtained a X10 deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. It was actually Yuki Kawamura, the number 5, the point guard for Team Japan. So I did want to address that. Other than that, I'm just excited for the final, man. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere, an incredible game. I think I'm going to learn something. I don't know what, but I'm going to learn something from this game. I remember 2008 when Ricky Rubio came out, looking like a solid veteran at 16 years old, turning 17 that year, and was able to have serious minutes against a stacked Team USA. Even though they didn't win the game, I learned that Ricky Rubio was going to be a very, very good NBA player. And a very, very good NBA draft prospect. Here we are 16 years later. I'm looking forward to learn something new again.
We'll all be there. And again, this was another episode giving you kind of like this little crash course on the Olympics. I'm looking forward to it. We got Josué looking forward to it. You guys will be looking forward to our wrap-up of these Olympics. If you are not subscribed, please do. And yeah, we'll hopefully come into the next episode as we have the medal winners and for us to wrap this up. So Josué, thank you so much for being on.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.